It's another edition of Aggie Pride, a UC Davis football podcast. On today's show, we have Sacramento Bee longtime reporter Joe Davidson. We chat all things offseason, the transfer portal, of course, the UC Davis recruiting class. We even take a peek at the 2026 football schedule and, of course, give our Super Bowl predictions. It's an awesome show. Dwight Smith is back in the house, so I hope you all enjoy it. As always, you can follow us on Instagram at UC Davis Football Podcast. That's where we'll have all sorts of announcements and like the most up-to-date posts. You can purchase any swag like this hat I'm wearing on AggiePridePodcast.com. And if you want to reach out to us, you can also go to the Contact Us tab on there and you can send us an email so that we can help you with whatever you're thinking about. So thanks to everyone who's been listening. We've had a lot of listenership and viewership this offseason, which has been great to see people keeping up with the Aggie offseason. If you're looking for anything specific, guests or stories that you'd like us to feature moving forward, feel free to, again, reach out to us and we'd be happy to chat. All right, enjoy. Welcome to Aggie Pride, the UC Davis football podcast, an interview-driven show focused on stories over stats and your number one home for everything happening in FCS football, the Big Sky Conference, and of course, your UC Davis Aggies. Each week, we sit down with players, coaches, alumni, and voices around the program to dive deep into the stories that matter and have a little fun along the way. This is Aggie Pride. Aggie Pride, a UC Davis football podcast. It's Super Bowl week, and we are here with Joe Davidson from the Sac Bee, and Dwight is back. Guys, how are we doing?
We're great. We just had our best material off air here, so I don't think we have anything left. So we'll just let you take it from here, Brock.
The people don't want that, Joe. They're sick. They're sick of Brock's voice. They need to hear more Dwight with his salt and pepper beard. And you know everything about everything because the last time we had you on, you shared wisdom from all corners of the world. And so we were just thinking signing week has come and gone. We've done transfer portal stuff. Land Larson's Patriots are in the Super Bowl down in Santa Clara. And so there's just all sorts of fun stuff to talk about. And, a little bit of quarterback news for the Aggies as always. So I guess first and foremost, Joe, what's on your mind? What sort of stories have been stoking your flames the most in this offseason?
It's always football, isn't it? There's always football season. The Caden Pinnick transfer surprised me. We're not supposed to be surprised anymore. Do I think he can be an FBS player? Yes. The reason I was surprised by his transfer from UC Davis to Washington State is because I talked to him after the Causeway Classic, and I knew him when his Delaware High School playing days. He was a Sacramento Bee All-Metro player, large school player of the year. Covered his cousin Stone Smart, who won a couple state championships at Delaware High Schools in the NFL. And so I've known the family, and he was so excited in talking about his relationship with Coach Tim Plough. And he's a mentor and he's a father figure, and I'm learning a lot, and we push each other. And he was also really excited about playing baseball for the Aggies. So that alone told me he'll play at least another season. But this is where we are, and these things happen. I thought Tim Plough handled it really well because Tim Plough's all about class. But yeah, he's a prideful coach. You put all that time in, you invest all that time in to recruit a guy, to work with a guy, and the hope is you have him for 3-4 years. They wish him well and all that. But the Aggies have a pretty good mantra. You guys know well. They just keep moving on. And the quarterback room with young Eason is a good player. I've heard good things about him. Signed a guy through the Aggies. Signed a guy, Jackson Colock, a quarterback at the University of Minnesota. So he's a vetted player. So they're not going to be talent thin at quarterback. So that's something that we could certainly talk about. I did a story on Martu Mapu this week, went down to Super Bowl week. He's the former Sacramento State All-American linebacker, third-round draft pick by Bill Belichick in his last draft. He's played a ton for the Patriots on special teams, linebacker, safety. He's ecstatic to be in the Super Bowl. He's a kid from Hawthorne, California, Southern California, Los Angeles area, and played every position just to get on the field. And student of the game, athletic, tough-minded. The story was fun where I said, how did you know you got drafted by the Patriots? And he said he was stuck in traffic in Los Angeles to see his parents. And he gets a phone call. He doesn't recognize the number, but he figures today's draft day, so we'll see. And he said it was Bill Belichick. And how'd you know it was Bill? He goes, well, he doesn't have much energy. And so I kind of figured it was him. So that was his biggest day. And now he's in the Super Bowl. So that's kind of cool. And the FCS guys can make it to the highest level. So that's really cool. And then high school signing day from December to this week. I did a story in the Sacramento Bee on who the Aggies signed and who Sac State signed and all that. So football never ends. I mean, what's going on? It's February and it's football, not just the Super Bowl.
Yeah, there's so much there, Joe, and so many places that we feel ecstatic to go with you in this conversation. But a place I might take you to, and you're familiar with Coach Plough's formula, if you will, that he's articulated kind of with I think refreshing consistency in an environment that's so quickly evolving. But that formula is we're about developing guys, right? That was the conversation around Caden. And then you see this class that is a highly ranked class, I think 5th ranked among FCS, that has a bulk of guys from the freshman level that are coming in as freshmen. And so just curious to get your thoughts as you see the evolving landscape and you hear that steady drumbeat from Coach Plough. If we're about developing guys, we're gonna be the best at bringing in high school folks, and then think about filling in gaps, right? Filling in key gaps with guys that are transferring in, and we have a really exciting group of guys, some from FBS, others from some competitors in the Big Sky, as well as across the FCS, and then from the JC level, coming in to put together this class of 24. So just your thoughts on that commitment to development in this evolving landscape, and in that context, your thoughts on what makes this class for UC Davis potentially special.
I applaud Coach Plough and his staff. We all know that recruiting is the lifeblood of college athletics. You have to get kids on your campus, and this is the transfer portal era, and it's swelled up to some 10,000 players, which is just insane. They're not all going to land. And so what Plough is big on is recruiting high school kids, and the bulk of your recruiting being incoming freshmen. So you could have them for 4 or 5 years. You contrast that with Sacramento State, with Brendan Marion, who was there for 1 year as a coach. Now he's the offensive coordinator at the University of Colorado under Deion Sanders. And he brought in 73 new guys, freshmen, mostly transfer guys, some freshman players, but mostly transfer portal guys. New coach Alonzo Carter has already brought in 45 players, a lot of them through the transfer portal, some of them high school recruits. The portal is great for a quick fix, but you only have those guys for 1 or 2, 3 years. Those players are vetted, so to speak, in the portal, so I understand that. The Indiana Hoosiers were 16-0, and one of the great stories in sports history. A lot of that was through the portal. So I think people are Tim Plough's going to be able to recruit skill players. He's going to be able to recruit quarterbacks. He'll be able to sit in somebody's living room and explain that I was in your shoes not long ago, some 20-something years ago. He was a UC Davis quarterback, a high school kid out of San Diego, and it changed his life. It's where UC Davis is where he met his wife. It's where he got his coaching start, and it's where he wants to be. So he'll get guys, and can you hold on to them? And they're not going to miss the beat at quarterback. Certainly, they're going to certainly be a competitive camp for that. And they got Jake Houseworth, a tight end at Cal, which will help. They got a couple junior college guys, but they're, as you mentioned, Dwight, they got a really good FCS class. Jack Brandt is a quarterback out of Boise. So I think, Jackson Faye is a receiver out of Manteca in this general expanded Sacramento region in the Valley. I saw him play a couple times. Terrific player. He'll get on the field. So it looks like we'll find out. Remember last year in spring ball, that's where Caden Pinnick emerged, and he pretty much secured the job. And so now spring ball is going to be the returning quarterbacks, including young Eason, who his uncle's name is on the press box as one of the all-time Aggies, Bo Eason. So how's that for bloodlines? And Tony Eason was part of is Bo's brother, who's from Clarksburg in the Sacramento River, played in the NFL, led the Patriots to their first Super Bowl in Super Bowl 20. Part of that great 1983 NFL draft crop of quarterbacks. So to answer your question, it looks like we really won't know how good this crop is, but it's pretty encouraging. You guys know the exhausting effort of recruiting, and nothing's binding until players sign. And so they get that past them, and away they go. There's the early December signing period, and then there's this signing period, and away we go. And we should remind people that college programs don't have 100 scholarships a year. They may have 60, 70, 80, 100 guys on their roster, but doesn't mean they have that many scholarships every year. So these things are hard to track down. I look at the Sacramento region in high school football, they're not all going to land. That's why the junior colleges are so loaded. That's why the portal's so full. But looks like a promising recruiting class, and spring ball will be here before we know it, and then we'll start to see all this in motion.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the other thing that we've seen with Plough is he's not afraid to, it's about development, but also guys that are at the freshman level and ready to play. You look at a guy like a Cam Totten who was getting valuable time, especially in the absence of Rex Connors, obviously lost for the year due to injury, but coming in and playing as a freshman. You look at a guy like Cofield, who really held down one side of the field as a freshman. And so as we think about, this freshman class, and Brock, I know you've spent more time in the weeds, and curious to hear your thoughts about this class. But there's a real possibility, Joe, to your point of what spring can mean, not only for folks that are returning, but for some of these guys that might be able to join early. And then of course, fall camp and how everything rolls out. So I'm excited as you to see not only these pieces that are coming in as transfers, to see if they're really able to make a mark and plug some of the areas that we need depth. But I'm excited about some of these freshmen to see who might be able to deliver next year and be on the field, especially in this environment where, of course, we want to say we're going to develop guys for 3-4 years. But as we saw with Caden, we had him for 1 year as a freshman. So, Brock, I'm curious to get you in here and hear your thoughts on the recruiting class.
I think that the quarterback position is always going to be the most talked about and most interesting one, especially when we have a quarterback-centric head coach. If we go back to the Ron Gould days, it was, our bread and butter was the running game, and it felt like we had a 1,300-yard back every year. Gabe Manzanares, Courtney Williams, and then moving on down the line to the golden years of getting Alonzo in there. But I'm interested in Jackson Collick. Big kid, doesn't run, but has a big arm and played at a big time public school in Southern California, where there's a trillion good programs and good athletes that scatter the country after having successful high school careers. Trainer Cleland was the guy for me that once Pinnick made the decision to leave, I thought, okay, it's going to be Cleland as kind of the next young freshman who gets that opportunity, which would create kind of an interesting dynamic, right? Like you have these uber talented high school freshmen who come to a quarterback pipeline type of school with the lineage and history, with a guru who, Coach Plough was just on Yogi Roth's podcast this week, who was the main Pac-12 analyst for all those years when the Pac-12 network was doing its thing. But, the amount of respect that he gets in the community, even from I've mentioned the Coach Dan Casey's on Twitter and that sort of thing, but in the actual community, in the coaching community. I remember when he won the AFCA top 35 coaches under the age of 35 award. It's like he's been a name in it for a while. And I think, um, one thing that I want to get back to you, Joe, on is the coaching aspect of this. So I'll ask you a question in a moment. But to go back to you, Dwight, I think the other part of this class that's interesting is the Weber State running back. His highlights were flashy and exciting. And then when you see someone get an offer from Oregon, you kind of perk up a little bit. Like maybe Dan Lanning and his staff know a little bit more than me and think this guy's pretty legit. Kobe Herdman is someone who I, because of just like the Instagram world, was constantly seeing his highlights all throughout the year. I don't know if he like tagged us on all his plays or someone did, but I just feel like my algorithm really liked Kobe. And so he's an exciting young running back too. And so when I think about the running back room and losing a Carter Vargas, same thing, like another situation where we lose a prominent player to the portal, but then we fill it with the portal. We filled Jackson Collick for Caden Pinnick. We filled Chauncey Webster for Carter Vargas. Like that room to me is pretty exciting. As always, the D-line position, we don't recruit many guys out of Colorado, and there's a lengthy kid, Corbin Wade, who stood out to me out of Lakewood just because of the size, which is hard to get at the FCS level. And you always wonder, like, well, what's the connection? We have historically been a California-centric school, and yet we've seen kind of inroads in Oregon a little bit. Since land, we've seen some inroads with Idaho, kind of the Hawkins connection back then. And then, you start seeing kids from different places because of the portal. So those are a few of the names. One more is the Hawaiian, who is another D lineman that we were able to secure this go around. And that's just interesting, again, because it's an area where we haven't traditionally recruited. But Trey, last name I will not butcher, is our wide receivers coach, and he's Hawaiian. And so he's been going back to, his home turf and was able to get Ben on board. So always interested in the D line because, like you said, Joe, like that is the part of a West Coast program that has always been kind of like the Achilles heel when you get into the deep postseason runs. Like, yeah, we have the dudes in most cases on the outsides. We have the talent. We have the skill. Do we have the size and physicality inside? So I think that's always going to be like what we need to get to. But my question for you, Joe, is, this last week, Bobby Houck, who is a big name in the FCS coaching world, also resigned. And his press conference, which I caught big pieces of, was pretty eye-opening. And he can be kind of a prickly dude. He's an old school guy. And I don't know if you'd want to play for him at times, but maybe he makes you better because he might be hard on you. But he had some really interesting comments, Joe. And I don't know if you got to hear any of that, but it makes me think of Plough too. And like you said, oh, Plough met his wife here, but like everything, we've heard this message. He's going to be here for a long time, but like you can see how it can wear on him to lose people like this. And it wore on someone like Bobby Houck enough where he said, like, I'm done with this. So I'm not necessarily feeling like Plough is saying I'm done with it, but just wanted to hear your thoughts on like the Montana coach stepping down and kind of how you see this impacting coaches from your vantage point.
And Plough is he's frustrated with things like he'd like to have more funding. He'd like to have more donors. He'd like to have bigger crowds. He'd like to have facilities that are equal and comparable to Montana and Montana State, some of the blue bloods of FCS football in the Big Sky. But he's also a guy, as we all know, who can control what he can control. It's a great cliche, but it's true. Yeah, how is not for everybody. He could be prickly. I think he's proudly prickly. He likes to be abrasive. He likes to chafe on people. He has banned the student newspaper at the University of Montana from coming to games in recent years because he's sensitive to criticism. I think that's a big thumbs down on that. He called the Sac State president, Luke Wood, a clown because Luke Wood this season called the Grizzlies, Pandas, all in good fun, big deal. Montana won the game and everything. I ran into a lot of Montana fans after that game, covering the game. Montana won, looked impressive, looked the part of a powerhouse team. And the fans didn't take it personal. They had fun with it. They were charmed that President Luke Wood, after calling them the Pandas in a lighthearted moment, kind of fire up a rivalry, he went and visited with those Montana fans in the stands. They didn't throw beer at them and old produce and all that. But yeah, Bobby Hauck is old school. And I think old school coaches bristle at the portal and dealing with agents or people, hey, you have a better thing here. And so the timing of his resignation surprised a lot of people. You see the FCS Facebook pages and people thought he was a quitter. And he did it, I think, to really kind of secure that signing class. Probably was telling recruits that they're going to keep the hire in-house, which made everything, you don't want to sign a bunch of guys and then have your coach quit. But they hired the receivers coach. They just promoted him, and he was, kudos to Hauck for saying, I've had enough. This isn't what I signed up for, but that's what it's become. And and we'll see. You hate to see. I mean, that's a big blow for the Montana Grizzlies. Montana State fans are loving it. They'll couch it that he's afraid of Montana State, so that rivalry's fierce. But we need coaches like Tim Plough, guys who are good for the game. He's a superb quarterback coach. He will say it. He will tell you that we develop quarterbacks. We've done that for years. He's been mentored. He was mentored proudly by the great Jim Soker. So he'll talk about that. Jim Soker was a great quarterback developer as well, and including Chris Peterson, who became a coach there at UC Davis and skyrocketed. He's going to be in the College Football Hall of Fame. And so we'll see. And it's going to be the long-term thing, Dwight and Brock. Will this kind of change with the portal and NIL? Will it drive more coaches out? Well, if it does, there'll be more coaches to come in. There'll be younger waves of coaches. And Tim Plough comes across as an old soul who's big on history, big on tradition. He's got old school values too. It's blocking and tackling and accountability, but he's got a new wave era of thinking, of making football fun. I think his whole mantra of find joy, and I've quizzed him on that. How do you find joy when you're crashing into everybody every day and it's 100 degrees and you got coaches, barking at you? Well, there's joy in all of that. And so you think about football. Yeah, it's hard work. It's got to be the most demanding hard work for any sport, but the rewards are big. Lifetime memories and teammates forever, and teammates that become your best friends, and they're in your weddings, and then you get a chance to win games and chase after championships. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with any of the old time coaches, old thinking coaches, and if this NIL and portal stuff just starts driving them out.
Joe, I've been curious about a dynamic that it isn't necessarily new, but I'm seeing it show up in the context of the UC Davis recruiting class, this new kind of era, I think also with the team across the causeway. But, we have a handful of these guys that, whether it's Houseworth, Colick to a certain extent. I think we even have a guy who was at Holy Cross. And, you see in their posts, they say, I'm coming home, right? And if there's any guy that's better, to know about everyone's origins and in the context of the Sacramento region, just this, this piece of recruiting that's like, come home to California to finish your career or to get a reset. And I think, we see UC Davis, we see other California programs maybe benefiting from that. Just curious your take on that, what you're seeing from the perspective of kids that, maybe get an offer, go somewhere, and then there's a real draw for whatever reason to come back, get a new start, or make their stamp in California, in the Sacramento region.
Real quick, Dwight. I mean,
Yeah,
pointing this out, Joe, we have a Missouri bounce back kicker who's from Colfax. We have the Weber State kid who's from California. We have the Cal transfer tight end who's from Fortuna. So yeah, I think it's a great question, Dwight. I just wanted to add in some of the kind of bigger names that are bouncing back to their local community.
Well, and you think about high school recruiting over the years, and I've been at the Sacramento Bee since 1989, so I've seen a lot of it. And kids want to go away. They want to go away to college and be their own man. And it's a great opportunity to go out of state. But then a lot of times they like to come back, which is kind of the theme here in this question, because home is where the heart is. And so many of these players like coming back. It's a chance to reset, full circle, and also their families could come see them. And those things are important. And so those are always interesting. And I always get asked this over the years, many times, why doesn't UC Davis and Sacramento State just recruit locally? Well, there's no such thing as a hometown discount. Why wouldn't Sac State and UC Davis broaden their reach? Why do they have to only be specific? This isn't junior college. But to that end, Sac State and UC Davis can really do the bulk of their recruiting in California. It's the most populated state in America. There's more high schools in California than anywhere else. We think of the LA, Los Angeles basin, San Diego County, Orange County, massive. Tim Plough knows this. He's from San Diego. There is a ton of players to recruit right here. But as you mentioned, Brock, there's been a reach to Oregon and Idaho. Those are still West Coast. I think UC Davis is in business, is open for business for players, student athletes across the country. And but I think they're going to continue to primarily recruit in California. But there is something to be said about coming full circle, coming home, and taking on. And we think about these guys are playing. Sure, they all like to play. Get drafted in the NFL or sign as an undrafted free agent, be the next Lan Larison, who could get on an NFL roster. But Plough is always big on, hey, a UC Davis degree can change your life. That's really what you're here for, and you're playing football. That's the joy part of it, the double joy. So I think that's not lost on him. I think of Jacob Syke from who transferred in for his senior year, graduate student from the Ivy League. He had a blast. Playing for the Aggies, and he had a fantastic season. And that was a transfer portal thing that made all the sense in the world. I joked with Plough and Syke. I said, were you an academic qualifier? You can imagine going for the Ivy League, the UC Davis. Yeah, that's the kind of vibe that they have. These are exceptional student athletes who happen to be, crunchers in football. But so I think the California basin is never going to dry up in recruiting. We just think of Southern California alone. There's a reason all the junior college football rosters up and down the state are just stacked with good players, because they can't all land scholarships. There's just not enough out there. What are the national studies show that about 3% of high school kids even play college football at any level. And so that's just where we look at the hourglass. It's so hard to get to that level. So I think a lot of kids understand how important it is to secure a scholarship, how unique it is. And the mature kids don't take it for granted. We have too many kids on social media who will go to a college because they'll say on social media that their deciding factor was that they get to wear jersey number 1. That's laughable. I think at UC Davis recruits have to be exceptional students, and so they're going to do the double package. They're going to be students, they're going to be football players. That's not lip service. That's true. You guys have lived it. You've seen it. They're not going somewhere to get a jersey number because too many of those kids do. And sometimes those kids wind up in a transfer portal with nowhere to go.
Yeah, good points. I'm torn in which direction to take this. I'm kind of interested in an early off season, like way too early prediction of the UC Davis 2026 squad. When you look at the schedule, it feels more and more favorable by the moment, which I know is like a dangerous thing to do this time of year. But like you start at Portland State, San Diego, okay, SMU, but then Stetson at home, Montana without Bobby Haug, Eastern Washington at home. Your road games are Southern Utah, back at home, Northern Colorado, Weber State on the road, Utah Tech at home. And then you finish at Idaho, which could be a tough one. And then at home against Cal Poly, you dodge Montana State. We obviously lost Caden Pinnick. We're not sure about the Connors brothers. It feels doubtful for me at the moment, but I'd love to be proven wrong. And so I will kind of go into this, and then Dwight, maybe we can finish afterwards with some of your takeaways on the signing class, and then also some of Joe's just like greater Sacramento region high school recruits. Some of the names that have stood out might be kind of interesting. But yeah, Joe, when you think about this makeup of the Aggies, some of the guys they lost, you mentioned Jacob Sack-Syke and some of the, important, guys who were grad transfers last year, Kalani Riddick, Cole Batson on the defensive side of the ball that we might need to replace. Like, how do you see this Aggie team looking?
Great job looking at the schedule. I'm looking at it right now. What an interesting opener. August 29th at Portland State. That's a Big Sky Conference game. That's unusual. But you get the game in when you can. So the Aggies will probably win that game, probably win at San Diego. SMU is a tough game on the road, probably beat Stetson. So you're 3-1, with Montana coming in. It's favorable. The one thing that's glaringly missing is there's no Sac State. And the Causeway Classic may be on ice forever. That game started in 1954 when Sac State started football. That game needs to get back on the schedule somehow, some way. I talked to, UC Davis folks about, why isn't this continuing? Sac State people saying, "Hey, we'll pay for the buyout if you cancel a contract." Rocco DeLuca, the athletic director of UC Davis, said, we're not in the business of canceling contracts. It's a great point. That's a fair point. And they're going to do what's best for them. And Sac State's the one that pulled out of the Big Sky. Had Sac State not pulled out of the Big Sky, the Causeway Series would continue. And so Rocco's right. This is not a UC Davis issue. You can't put this on UC Davis. Sac State's the one that pulled out of the conference. I appreciate Sac State's ambition in trying to get into the FBS. But pulling out of the Big Sky, I think, was too premature. Get your stadium ready, get your long-term going, but why not remain in a conference that has been so good? It's an elite conference at the FCS. There are guys in the Super Bowl over the years from the FCS, including Cooper Kupp, the receiver for the Seahawks, who was the MVP of the Super Bowl a few years ago with the Rams. So it's unfortunate that Sac State and UC Davis aren't playing. But to answer your question there, Brock, I think spring ball, find out who the quarterback is, use that momentum. And many things I like about Tim Plough is he likes to name a quarterback as his starter after spring, heading into summer. So that way the team knows. He's not trying to grandstand it and, keep it a secret and all that. So they'll be curious to see if that'll be the case, because it should be a heck of a quarterback battle. There's no leading candidate, at all. But we'll see. We'll see. And it'll be different without Bobby Hauck, but maybe the Aggie fans will still, jeer Montana and call them the Pandas just to irk somebody, just for good old time's sake.
Love it. Well, it's going to be interesting. We will get a formal prediction from you if you're allowed to do that, if the Sacramento Bee will allow you to give a formal prediction as we get closer to the season. But Dwight, let's kick it back to you, man. I mean, you're a wide receiver. We got a modern day guy from the Fighting Randy Wrights, who's a big kid, which is something we've been saying, like, all our receivers are short, really athletic, fast guys who have make a big impact. We got Zach Jones coming back. We got Stacey Dobbins coming back. We got Winston Williams coming back. But out of this class, maybe some wideouts or other receivers who stands out to you.
Yeah, we got to see Randy at I think it was a Rhode Island game, if I'm remembering correctly. And Randy, I was heading to my car to pick something up, and he pulled me over and introduced me to the recruit, Cohen, I believe, saying his name correctly, Cohen Parnell. Big kid. Like, I was standing next to him. I was like, this guy's going to be a freshman. Holy crap. And it gives me hope and excitement for the legend of the big receiver. We know that, we looked at the unit last year and they were impressive, but small and quick and speedy. And, we remember back to the days when there was a guy wearing number 3 who just took the FCS and the Big Sky by storm. could go up and get any ball. And so it's always exciting to see potential mix of the guys coming in, some small speedsters again in this class, but excited to see what Cohen can do. Also excited to see, the kind of the O-line pipeline continue. I think we have 4 O-linemen, and maybe unlikely that, those guys see the field this year, but depth, of course, as you said, Brock and Joe, you alluded to this, at the D-line and O-line position is the mark of what it takes for us to move into that echelon that we've talked about with the Dakotas and the Montanas. And so to see, guys at the O-line position coming from in-state and out of state is really exciting to kind of give our guy Mike Cody some depth to work with, coming out of a season where every O-lineman was a returner. So those are a couple of things that stand out to me. And then these transfers, obviously, I think he goes by Boogie Sylvester. I got a chance to watch his highlights, and yeah, it just looks like a bigger body that can really do some damage, but also has the shiftiness. And so I think about Jay Fish and Sylvester together, and that gets me really excited. Also it's been noted his pass catching ability too. And I think that's what made Jordan Fisher stand out in addition. So I think like whoever's behind center is going to have, again, an embarrassment of riches at the skill position, having Winston William coming back. Houseworth, it's exciting. We love to see, our big tight ends rumble down the field and also open up holes for our running backs. And so I'm really excited about this class, excited to see, Joe, to your point, what shakes out in spring ball. But I think it's another stamp in the progress of our program to continue in this environment, to bring in a diverse class. When you talk about freshmen, guys coming from high school, FBS transfers, thoughtful FCS transfers, and just, I really like the logic of we thoughtfully plug holes. I think it can work to bring in 40 guys and, mix and match, but it can also not work. So I think this is a really thoughtful approach, and excited to see how it all shakes out.
Yeah, Joe, let's finish with some of the Sacramento high school news because we geek out over it, and I'm particularly interested in maybe like a couple names that you are most excited about their futures. We know about the Rider Lions and BYU and that kind of blue chipper. But if there's anyone else who you're really looking forward to seeing how their college career plays out, and then if there's any also like high level storyline you notice about just the difference in what's happening to the high school recruits, like if you feel like there are some slipping through the gaps because of the changing landscape, or if you feel like no, if you're good enough you're still getting your D1 offer. Just because Plough, one thing he's mentioned is like we are getting higher level high school recruits because of the FBS programs using the portal to poach top end FCS talent and lower tier FBS talent. So yeah, just wanted to get your thoughts on the high school landscape up there.
Yes, good stuff. So Jason Womack is a defensive back out of Oak Ridge High School in El Dorado Hills, up Highway 50. He's signed with Cal Poly, 4-year varsity high school player, which is so rare. It's an elite program, great athlete, defensive back, could play receivers, special teams. He's ecstatic to go to Cal Poly, and Cal Poly's a member of the Big Sky. It's a big rival of UC Davis. So he was a little nervous because there was a coaching change. Tim Skipper took over for Paul Wolf, and sometimes that means you're done. But they honored that, and he signed. So there's the guy I'm curious about. Grant High School had 2 linemen who just signed yesterday this week with Cal. So I'll be curious to see how they do with the Bears. You mentioned Rider Lions. I think this guy's a great player. He's going to BYU. He's got a 1-year Mormon mission. I think he's going to be an NFL guy. He's really impressive. The guy who took over for him because of an injury in the NorCal playoffs is a young man named Brody Rudnicki. He's going to be a 5-star recruit. He wins a game in the NorCal finals against Reardon of San Francisco. Just exceptional effort. Then he plays the state championship. runs for 150 yards, 2 touchdowns in dense fog down in Southern California, and is lights out and wins a state championship. He's only a junior, and he's gotten an army of offers, everybody from Michigan to Cal to everywhere else. So there's the next generation there. I've done the signing day stories for the Bee since the early 90s, and this is one of the smallest classes. So we had 16 guys who signed with Division I NCAA, FBS to FCS back in the early signing period, and then another 5 this week. So it puts it up to 21. We've had a lot of years where we had 30 guys, and I think it all plays into the portal. And the colleges, they're picking up a lot of guys. They can't blame them. These guys are already vetted. But the whole point still stands, though, Dwight and Brock. If you are really good, it doesn't matter what high school you play for, any of this noise that you have to play at a powerhouse program like Bosco or Mater Dei or Sarah of San Mateo or De La Salle or Folsom or Oak Ridge is ridiculous. Oh, you got to go there because it's the only way you can get recognized. No, college coaches spent the last 3 weeks bouncing across high schools across this state and across this country as they're looking for recruits, and they will stop at the powerhouse high schools, and they will stop at schools that haven't been to the playoffs in 10 years. They don't have time to break down, what the win and loss record is and all. They don't care. They want to see prospects. They want to see what a guy looks like in person in the weight room. They want to see his grades. They want to see his body. They want to chit chat with him a little bit. That's what gets you recruited. Not, oh, well, they've won 10 games in a row, or they're, nationally ranked 10th or something. That's just complete noise. I hear every so often I'll hear from a parent, and they'll send me an email or a social media note, and they'll say, I don't understand why my son's not more on the radar. UCLA said that if he catches 15 touchdowns this year, that they'll recruit him. Nobody's saying that. So that kind of stuff is absurd. But what I like to tell them is, like, go to a junior college practice at field level and see if you could fit. Can you play at that level? Or go to a UC Davis practice or a game and see, are you that kind of guy? If you are a 6'1", 230-pound defensive tackle or a offensive tackle, do you think you could play at a junior college where they have 6'6" guys, 300 pounds, and not to mention what UC Davis happens as? So there's always a reality check. We certainly appreciate people who want to play in college, but there's also a reality factor. So the recruiting thing is always interesting. Kudos to the kids who sign. I'm looking at all the kids from Sacramento who signed this week and back in December. How many of them will stay at those colleges? How many will jump in the portal? Why do kids jump in the portal? Because they're inherent competitors and they want to play. They don't always recognize that there's depth charts. If you show up at a 4-year college NCAA Division I program and there's all that depth, they've already put in their time, and not everybody's going to play as a true freshman. But Dwight, you mentioned earlier, guys like Cam Totten, he's a kid out of Folsom and Elk Grove Unified as well. If you're an exceptional freshman, like a Caden Pinnick, you will play. Otherwise, you may have to wait your turn. And jumping into the portal is a risky business because not everybody's going to land. Could you imagine having multiple scholarship offers out of high school? Maybe even a dozen or more. Then you don't play. Then you get antsy. Then you get bad advice, jump in the portal, and they don't land. That's a bummer. And that's the grim truth of it. So an enduring theme is, hey, go where you want it. Go where you might play. Treat it as a job and a career move, academic athletics. And don't worry about what everybody else says. Do what works for you.
Yeah, that's the gritty truth, Joe. I mean, it's just a different kind of calculus. We talked on a previous podcast about it, thinking about the calculus when we played, it's just, very different now. And you're asking 16, 17, 18, 19-year-olds to engage in a type of grown man calculus around risk and reward and opportunity. It is a bit of a different environment. And so it is good to bring it home that, like you said, the rich football legacy here at home in California, in the Sacramento region, is not going anywhere. UC Davis is on its way. The team on the causeway, across the causeway, is on its way, and across the state. And so it's back to that bounce back piece, thinking about the guys from the class this year wherever they're going, it is a good thing that the legacy of football in the Sacramento region at the FCS level is going to continue. And so, hopefully for some of those guys, if it doesn't work out, they have a place to fall back to. As we get ready to wrap, Joe, want to talk about the big game. I know you're going to be potentially barbecuing it up. I might be doing the same. I know Brock's got plans, going to be at the breakfast tomorrow. We've got guys from the FCS, from the Big Sky that are going to be represented across both squads. But we just want to get your thoughts on this game. You've of course been able to track, the really awesome trajectory of the Patriots. It's hard for me to say that as a Niners fan that the Seahawks trajectory has been awesome, but it has been in a lot of ways a really complete team that they're bringing to this game. So just want to get your thoughts, maybe a prediction about the big game on Sunday.
Well, it should be great. It shows that teams could bounce back. The New England Patriots won 4 games last season, and they hired Mike Vrabel, like one of their former linebackers, and what a coach. And last night he's the coach of the year. And the coach of the year, player of the year, MVP, those are all voted on after the regular season. These aren't votes throughout the playoffs. So kudos to him. And Martu Mapu from across the causeway was an All-American at Sac State, and he raved about Vrabel and just how he has everybody's attention. And he seems to coach with a lot of spirit and joy, so that's refreshing. Mike McDonald's in his second year, I believe, with the Seahawks, and here they are. And this is their 50th year in the NFL as an expansion team. So I think there's a lot of Patriot fatigue. People are, they're done with Tom Brady. Well, he's gone, but they're still done with him. And they're done with Bill Belichick. Well, he's gone. Well, they're still done with him. And Robert Kraft, well, he's still there. So I think there's going to be a lot of this country is going to be pulling for Seattle. I think Seattle's probably is favored. I'm going to pick Seattle in a tight game. I think it's going to be 17-14, low scoring. Sam Darnold's an interesting guy. He was the first pick in the draft for the Jets, and he's bounced around. He can play. Man, can he play. And Drake May, a young quarterback for the Patriots. Man, he can play. These guys are Drake May is still with his junior high sweetheart. So that's kind of cool and refreshing. And, and Levi Stadium, I covered Super Bowl 50 10 years ago when Levi Stadium hosted that game, and Peyton Manning and the Broncos beat Cam Newton and the Carolina Panthers. So it's a great venue. When you build a new stadium, sometimes the reward is you get the Super Bowl. So here it is again. We got good weather. Brock's going to go down there and feed his face tomorrow. That's why you're driving down there. You'll drive 10 hours for a free meal. It's outrageous. But also, we get you.
It's not far, Joe. I'm a Bay Area guy, and I'm just heading into the city. I'm not going to Santa Clara. The breakfast, like a lot of these events, is near the Moscone Center. It's at the Marriott. I wanted to go yesterday. I was out and about for work, and I was entertaining a client from the East Coast. I was like, okay, we should try to swing by the Super Bowl experience for a second. It was just an afternoon availability, and I realized why, because the NFL Honors was on. But yeah, I will eat on behalf of you and Dwight tomorrow for sure.
Yeah, thanks, and send us some text messages and let us know how it goes. And
yes,
no, the Super Bowl experiences are cool. There's a 40-yard dash for people to run. That's what makes it fun. They're trying to
go have fun and tear your hamstring running the 40-yard dash at the Moscone Center. I love that.
Scratch and hype for you, cool out there. Exactly right. Well, what about you?
Yeah, well, Dwight has to jump. So Dwight, you give it and then you jump to your meeting.
Yeah, I got to give the Seahawks the edge here. Really love what the Patriots have done. Your points about Vrabel. Love seeing how he congratulates every guy as they leave the field. Just says a lot in that action right there. Our boy Lan Larison is a Patriot. You've got Efton Chisholm, who's got some fun time this year as well. But the Seattle has a complete team. All 3 phases. We experienced that devastatingly when we played them twice towards the end of the year with limited success. But I just think they have the firepower. JSN is quite unguardable. And then you've got Cooper Kupp when they're double teaming, and they can run the ball well, even without Charbonnet. So I got to give Seattle the edge. I'll say 17. Seattle are the Super Bowl champions.
Nice. Well, thanks for joining, Dwight. I will finish on my end with a quick story.
See you, Joe.
See you, Dwight.
And Joe, you probably remember this, but the CIF state championships used to be at Sac State for a while. And my good buddy and I, Brian Gomez, who played football at Concord High with me, and then he was a real athletic guy. He actually played at a program in Oregon, Eastern Oregon, for a year, and then bounced back to DVC, and didn't end up like making it at the FBS level or even FCS level, but he was a better player than me, better athlete. And it just goes to show like the interesting trajectories of careers. Like I remember he ran like a Nike combine clocked, electronic time, like it was a 4.5940 our junior year. And I was like, I cannot break 5 flat. And yet, I still had a good career, still got to play at UC Davis, still was able to make an impact, just was a different type of player. But I bring up Ryan because we did this thing, Joe. We were not journalists at that point in our lives. We had no podcast. We were just super fans, and we were coaching back at our alma mater at Concord High. And we would go on the Saturday where there were the 3 games, and we would spend all day at Hornet Stadium. And it would be cold all day, and we would go to the food trucks 3 or 4 times to get something warm to keep us warm. We'd bring in the hand warmers like we were in Bozeman this year with my wife. And 2017, 2018, Sam Darnold's alma mater, San Clemente, big time public school in Orange County, which is a rare phrase to hear, went down there and they beat Stone Smart and the Del Oro Golden Eagles. And I was super bummed because I loved watching Stone, and it's been fun to kind of see his career. So Darnold wasn't there anymore, but that's like what I think of when I think of Sam Darnold. Oh yeah, he went to San Clemente. They weren't even good until his senior year, which was like, I think 13, 14. But a few years later, saw him at Hornet Stadium against Del Oro, the home of Caden Pinnick and Hunter Paul and a bunch of Aggies who've worn the blue and gold. So that being said, I think the game on Sunday, I was so 49er centric and knew it was a long shot, just kind of like how my Warriors are a big time long shot now that we traded for Kristaps Porzingis and not Giannis Antetokounmpo. Tears. But I really just was not as interested in the teams remaining. Like I was pulling for Josh Allen and the Bills, like everyone and their mother. And then even the Broncos, I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. And then when it ended up being Seahawks Patriots, like as a NorCal person, you are kind of like, ugh, this is rough. But I'm hoping that by the time the game comes around, I'm so like low expectations that I just enjoy it. Sometimes it's nice not to be stressed out about a game, just to like watch it as a total casual fan, which is rare for me. I feel like I always have like an extreme dog in the fight. That we'll see what happens. So I don't care what happens. I do think that the Seahawks look like a better team on paper, and watching the game. So I'll say it's like something like 24-17 Seahawks. But any closing thoughts from you, Joe? Anything that was on your mind that you're like, didn't get to touch on this, or like a parting shot for the Aggie Pride podcast community?
Sure. Thanks, Brock. We just don't want a bad Super Bowl. We've had too many of those, over 60 Super Bowls. You mentioned Eastern Oregon. I'm from Eastern Oregon. My high school years were the northeastern corner in Eastern Oregon. College football is in La Grande, and they try to recruit California kids, and they go up there, and as soon as winter hits, they go back to California because it's just so frigid. It's kind of that Montana, Dakota type of cold. But
that was it. I had 3 high school buddies who went, and they all left after fall semester.
That's right. And it's just so cold. We talk about how hard it is to get recruited, how hard it is to make to land. And the other thing that we got to always remember, Brock, is these kids who sign these letters of intent. These are year-to-year deals. These aren't 4-year, 5-year contracts. They're year-to-year. So their pressure on them is to maintain. They can't suddenly become slacker students or slacker in football drills or in the weight room, because they'll just, you got to move on. So there's always that. So motivation is always there. And I think there's going to be, as long as guys like Tim Plough are coaching, the Aggies will be in the forefront. They'll always be nationally ranked in the top 5 or 10 in the FCS. It's a big tribute to him, and we'll see what happens in spring ball. He's always a joy to talk to, and a terrific coach. And it's a bummer that Lan Larison's not playing in the Super Bowl. We know that guy can compete. He got injured early, some kind of foot or leg injury. I can't remember. He's the pride of Idaho. You could throw down steers and you could play in Big Sky football and you could get to the Super Bowl, but he'll remember this and he'll be back. He'll be back. We know he'll get back to playing shape. He's a Mike Vrabel type of guy. So how cool is that? Shoot, maybe even Lan Larison and Martu Mapu of Sac State, maybe they've even had meals together. I don't know if that's allowed. The Causeway Creed that you avoid the other guy, but now they're teammates. So that's kind of cool. That's what sports will do. Football will do. You could have unique experiences for a lifetime.
Yeah. Well, fun stuff. I'm glad that we could connect with you today. It's an off season that it's got a lot of interesting storylines for the Aggies. And I think expectations are high. My early preseason prediction is I think we're going to win a ton of games. I think it could be a 10-win regular season for UC Davis. And so lots of exciting things to continue to follow throughout the offseason. We'll try to hook up with you again as it gets closer to fall camp or maybe spring ball. But have a great weekend. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Enjoy time barbecuing, and we'll talk again soon.
Sounds great. Thanks, Brock. Enjoy the breakfast. Bring a to-go box so you could just load up and bring it home and rub it into Dwight and me just for old time's sake.
Yeah, will do. All right. Thanks, Joe.
See you guys. All right.